Can I get a motion to approve minutes from last month?
So moved.
Second? Can I get a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, the minutes passed. So as we go down to consent items, I've had one request to move one down for discussion. Are there any others on the list? We're going to talk about item B. Does anybody else want to pull off any other items for discussion? Okay, so we're going to go ahead and it's item B. It's the resolution to approve Plan Commission's 2021-22 work program. And Mr. Cathcart had some questions. Oh, Candace.
I think that might have been tagged incorrectly. It should have been 2020 only. We're not doing 21 or 22.
2020, okay.
Just for this year.
Okay. Councilmember Cathcart, did you have questions?
Yeah, and actually that clarification put me a little bit more at ease. I think there's some items that definitely should rise to the top in terms of the Plan Commission's work plan for 21 for moving forward. So definitely puts me at ease. But I guess my very basic question would be, what is the necessity of approving a work plan just for the next 2 months?
It's in the code.
So just process. Okay.
Any other questions? Okay, great. Thank you, Candace. Thank you, Michael. All right, we're going to go down to staff reports. Andrew Chance, you're up first with the Spokane Library's Kids Spaces at New Facilities update.
All right. Can everyone hear me? Great. I'm going to share my screen here. All right. Well, thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak to you today. We are very excited to show off our kid play spaces that will be part of our new facilities when we start bringing them online next summer. So we just wanted to give you a preview of what is coming down the pipe. Kid spaces were the most popular improvement that we heard from the public, and we're really excited to bring something really different to the community. So a little, why doesn't this change? Sorry. There we go. So a little bit of background on the play spaces. Their primary function is around big body play. So little kids jumping, balancing, running, crawling, rolling, with constructive play being this secondary thing of building and creating. And this whole experience is based and wrapped around imaginative play. We know that if we create opportunities for kids to use their imagination, they're going to do it. It just comes naturally to them. So it's really setting up an environment for all three of these types of play to happen in the facilities. And the concept that we're going with is this concept of the hidden world. So there's some familiarity with these scenarios or these environments, but there's also something a little bit hidden in the landscapes and in the environments as well. And I think you'll see what I mean when we get there. It's part of the imagination that we're going for with these spaces. Kind of the look and feel that we're going for here is this mid-century modern feel, this modern meets nostalgic. So almost a retro feel that we're looking at with some of the graphics and the designs. That's just some of our branding. So we'll just go right in. I know I'm limited on time here, but we'll just start with the downtown area. So this is the second floor overlooking the river. Very substantial space for the downtown library, for the kids area. And each of these spaces has a marquee character for the spaces. And we thought it'd be fun to incorporate the Garbage Goat's cousin into this play space. So he's going to be the main marquee character for these play spaces. And really, it's centered around the river. It's near the river, so that's what we're incorporating into these spaces. Really, there's a slide there, places for kids to climb. You see that river log here on right here for A. And what we have here is almost reminiscent of the Monroe Street Bridge. So it's almost like you're going underneath the bridge, and this area up in the top is you looking up from the water. So you're going into the water, having this experience, this play experience for the kids. You've got some red band trout in there as well, but they're flying red band trout. So a little bit of fun and play in our own local environment. And of course, you know, he's a submariner, so he uses something that's reminiscent of the gondola from the sky ride that we see there with Parks. So again, having some fun with our local scenery here. But kids can climb in that, they can play in that, and have fun in that. And then you'll see further on down here towards the left, you've got the inside of a fish that kids can play in and crawl around in, and again, have a great experience. And this is a view that you'll see from the outside on the second floor. All these flying rainbow trout fish, we're looking at that being more of a community project where kids and their families can help create that, giving some ownership and into the experience for when we open. Shadle, you'll recall at Shadle there is a community garden. The community had asked us to put some learning experience around food, nutrition, and gardening. So we're going to play with that with the kids area. And here the marquee character is a moose. Again, another local vibe that we have there. But here, you know, he has a vegetable stand or a farmer's market, again, popular in Spokane, but some really big vegetables that kids can play around with and play in and slide down and really launch their imagination into this area. These items down here they can pull out of the garden, play with, you know, even pretend that they're merchants there. You see these giant-sized broccoli trees, which are kind of fun, and seed packets that the farm stand is made out of. Really some fun elements, I think, here that the kids will have some fun with. Another view here, again, you've got a slide going down, the giant carrots. And here's another view off in the back. Over here is the flower garden. That's more geared towards the little kids. And these little structures here, those are clouds. So again, playing with the environment, it doesn't hurt the line of sight or anything like that, but it adds another element to the environment here. This is an outside view coming from outside Wellesley, really trying to improve the visibility of the library as people can drive by and see the active nature that's happening inside the facility. And here we have Liberty Park. And the marquee figure here is the Sasquatch. He loves camping, and he loves going with his family. And one of the fun features here is that there's going to be a zip line where kids actually can't get on the zip line, but they can have one of the Sasquatches use the zip line, you know, through one of the levers that they can press, which is pretty fun. The cool tie-in here is that this isn't a park. It's in Liberty Park, and there's some great tree cover in the park area. So really trying to play with the environment there of this being in nature. So we thought that this would kind of be fun to have a camping experience while you're in the park as a family or as a kid. Again, there's our friend the Sasquatch. Kids can, again, climb all in here. We're designing this with high visibility as well, all these areas. So we're not in danger of having lost kids behind panels. Everything is very permeable as far as eye line or sight lines go. Here's another view. I love this view here. It just looks so fun for the kids to interact with. And you've got an exterior view here. Again, we're very much keeping in mind the placement of this facility in a park and trying to have some more fun with it. And then we've got the Shaw Hilliard Play Area. This is in partnership with Spokane Public Schools. The theme here is Mount Shaw. So our marquee characters here is a mountain lion, or are a mountain lion, and a osprey. So we're high up in altitude here. So we've got some cool geometric shaped mountains for kids to again play in and on. You'll see shelving throughout these structures too. We're trying to incorporate shelves throughout all of the play areas, so it's part of that experience. You've got these light structures that are also reminiscent of hot air balloons. So again, having some fun with the structure of the facility itself and being a little more imaginative with it. This area right here for the little kids, it's going to be themed out more like an osprey nest. So that's where that character comes more into play for this area. Part of the challenge for this site is, it is a shared use facility. So the design of it is we don't want the little kids really going outside of this area. So traffic control is really important to us, and that's part of the design of trying to control traffic patterns with the placement of the play opportunities here. Another view. And there's our friend the mountain lion. Another view here. And then we've got the external view, exterior view. We'll likely be putting some holes in these mountains for more visibility throughout the structures, as well as natural light coming into the facility. And then we have Indian Trail, which our friend the marmot is going to hang out there. And this one has actually changed a little bit. So this area where you see the docks, we're actually going to be putting a boat in there for kids to crawl around on it and play with and interact with. And then off on the side here, you have the salt rock structures, which we see all around Spokane. It's a little bit better view. Very similar in aspirations of kids being able to get inside. There's a little cave area in here that will have some books in here as well, but also serves as like a reading nook for kids. And then these are dragonflies up in the corner there that will also serve as light structures. Again, there's going to be a boat in here for kids to play with. And then South Hill, you got to have turkeys if you're doing South Hill. So that's what we went with for South Hill. You can't get away from them, and let's just embrace them. They are here, and it's a turkey treetops, almost like a tree house that kids will be able to interact with and play on as well. I think this one's pretty fun. You've got these bird houses down here. That's kind of a whimsical approach to the environment. And you've got wheat here, which is recalls the Palouse, which South Hill Library is near. So again, taking in our environment into these structures. Here's a bit of a better view. Another view from the side there. And here's an exterior view. again, it's really important for us to incorporate all the natural light we can in our facilities. So that's a very important consideration for us as we're building these out. So these are at 90%. We're finishing up in the next few weeks to get to 100%. What we'll see in the next 10% is an incorporation or callbacks to the other spaces. So there might be a reference to the Sasquatch space in the turkey treetops, or vice versa. The idea is that these worlds are interconnected, and it encourages folks to visit all the facilities to kind of find these Easter eggs throughout. But they can also serve as their own standalone experience as well. So that's what we have for the play spaces, and I hope that the council is as excited as we are to bring these forward to the community. Yes.
Yeah, thanks, Andrew. Very, very cool looking designs. I guess my question, though, is the goal that these play areas would be an area always supervised by parents, or would this be a hangout where, kids might just come and hang out on their own throughout the day or evening?
The idea is that the parents would be there as well. They're geared more towards little kids. So, parental supervision would definitely be a thing.
So is it your expectation then that building these won't require too much additional staffing to monitor and maintain and that sort of thing? Right.
I mean, the biggest thing is going to be cleaning. And that's something, obviously, in the environment we have now that is going to take extra care. But we're prepared to do that.
Well, that was actually my last question. Are you guys thinking about, God willing, we're going to be done with COVID very soon, but we just don't know what that looks like. But even putting COVID aside, obviously good hygiene and cleanliness and all that is really important regardless. And kids obviously have a good way of spreading, colds and flus and things like that. Are you guys thinking about certain, antibacterial materials or antimicrobial materials that would help limit exposure to those sorts of things?
Yeah, so that's all built into the specs. We're trying to make it as safe as possible. The folks that are building this with us, Lucy Creative, they have vast experience in children's museums, so they're very well attuned to that scenario, and we're going to go with the best practices that we can.
Great. Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions? Andrew, I would just ask one question. Are you planning at some point to possibly visit neighborhood councils and share that? This is amazing. This is really impressive. Are you going to be able to maybe hit up some of the neighborhood councils and share this presentation?
Yeah, that's the hope. We'd love to get out there more in public, and maybe even at sharing a video at this point, just to keep things, a little bit safer. So once we're around 100% design, we'll be sure to share out more.
And if you need assistance in, even if it's a video, getting that out to the neighborhoods, or if it's getting on a Zoom neighborhood council meeting, please let us know, because I think the neighborhood councils would be really interested in looking at these.
That's great feedback. Yeah, definitely any help that we can get in engaging is definitely welcome, because it's been a challenge, as you know.
Yeah, and it's wonderful. Candace, Mom, question.
Hey there, Andrew, did you send this for the packet, or if you didn't, could you?
I will. Yep.
Thank you. It'd be great for us to have it, just for the reason Councilmember Stratton's talking about. Sometimes, we can share it too.
Yep, you got it.
Thanks.
Anybody else have a comment or a question? Okay, we'll go ahead and move on. Thank you, Andrew. I appreciate it. That was a great presentation. We'll go ahead and move on to Director of Water and Hydroelectric Services appointment, Scott Simmons. Is he available? Amber, are you here for Scott? Okay, we can't hear you, but I'm gonna mute myself. We'll make sure we can hear you. can you turn your volume up maybe? Still can't hear you. Do you want to see what you can do and I can move ahead and get back to you? Okay. Eric Jones, we're going to get a Parks Wi-Fi update. There he is.
Hi. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
First off, I just want to, Andrew, well done on the libraries. It's an honor to be a partner and a neighbor next to these great facilities. So, well done. It's exciting to see. And if adults are allowed to be in there as well on a couple of those tree houses, that would be appreciated. But hey, just wanted to give a quick update. We had a meeting not too long ago to talk about Wi-Fi and the capabilities and the opportunities that we have in our parkland and adjacent partners like the library. So the library staff and Andrew's team play a crucial role in this as well. And we have two different tracks to give you an update. And Councilwoman Wilkerson was one of the leads on this. There's two different tracks. One, long-term needs for Wi-Fi, public Wi-Fi in the parks, but then short-term needs around any gaps in the Wi-Fi and capabilities for students, young professionals that don't have those opportunities right now with a lot of what COVID is happening. So Andrew and his staff are going to partner with, the school district is going to be one of those partners to really hone in to see what type of households, where are there gaps, is there equipment gaps as far as infrastructure, computers, and then working with Eric Finch and their team in the school district to see short-term what kind of opportunities are there to make sure that we don't have those gaps for the kids and young adults. Also then long-term, looking at the strategy of working with Eric's team on where there's infrastructure and fiber adjacent to parks, what type of infrastructure and opportunities can we give the public for those Wi-Fis? So an example is Liberty Park with the library, the Smart Park project. That's a great opportunity for that. Do we have that same opportunity at Shadle? We're able to expand our opportunities at Riverfront Park. So looking at other existing infrastructure that we have and being able to expand on that. But for right now, the group, we're leaning towards the short term, make sure we're able to provide Wi-Fi for everyone that needs Wi-Fi for schooling. And that's where the school district's going to play such a crucial role in that. And Andrew's team and Tara, they're already so dialed into this. I believe they're having a meeting today, or if not later this afternoon on that. So that's just where we're at. As far as the short term and long term, we don't want to give up on the long term, but we wanted to put focus on the short term, making sure that the kids have what they need in the Wi-Fi. Yeah.
Councilor Cathcart.
Yeah, I just wondered, could you elaborate a little bit more on that long-term vision? What do you see as being the primary goal that you're focused on?
So right now we have a great partnership with the library in Riverfront Park, and we piloted a free network around our facilities. A lot of that we use as being able to broadcast information. So let's say if you were entering Riverfront Park, you could either get a notification or things that are happening in the park, or a lot of it's around communication, but also the capabilities of expanding on the concept of outdoor classrooms, and giving network to people that don't have it. What we want to try to figure out though is there a balance between, should it be free Wi-Fi forever, 24/7, or is there a duration of time when you have that free Wi-Fi? So there's some of those details, and I'm not going to be the first one to tell you that I know what infrastructure needs to go where, and so that's where Eric's team plays a great role. But what we want to use for like Liberty is a communication tool, especially where we have language barriers as well. And also we need Wi-Fi and infrastructure for smart irrigation, and those other needs too that would really help us on the operations side.
So when you talk about a language barrier, are you thinking you would have English signage with a QR code and you could scan the QR code and read it in a different language? Is that kind of the concept or something bigger?
Correct. That's an idea. Or a QR code just to say what's happening in the park, or what are the upcoming events or farmers markets, and being able to have that resource and take away that just the people that have, they might have a smartphone, but they don't have the data plan or something like that. This gives them an opportunity to have that barrier. And I don't know if Andrew has any updates either on their meeting today.
No, I'll get that meeting later this afternoon of the update from Tara. But I mean, for us, it's really how can we lessen the digital divide? If it's one thing that COVID has shown us is that there's a huge gap between the haves and the have-nots, especially around technology. So any way that we can help mitigate that, we're getting together not just the school district, but all sorts of other organizations like Spokane Regional Health District, folks that have the data. We're getting together today as our kickoff meeting to see what's out there, to see how we can make sense of this information and really see and identify how we can attack the problem.
Great. Okay. Thank you, guys.
Anybody else have questions? Garrett, as always, thank you. And you're going to stick around for the budget strategy at the end? Perfect. Thanks. Let's go back up to see if Amber has gotten some volume for her. Are you there, Amber?
I am. Can you hear me now?
We can hear you.
Okay. I'm sorry. I don't know what I did there, but I'm glad it's working now. Okay. I am here to present Mayor Woodward's appointment for Steve Byrne for the department head position for Water and Hydroelectric Services Director. A little bit of background on Steve. Steve's an accomplished engineer with professional expertise in civil and geological engineering. He's been with the city since 2000, so quite a while. And he has served in and worked his way up through a variety of different engineering roles here with our organization. Most recently, he served as the Water and Hydroelectric Services, Water and Hydroelectric Superintendent out at Upriver Dam, and I believe he's been there since 2013, so about 7 years. Steve was selected as the top candidate for this position out of a pool of 31 candidates from a competitive recruiting process that was run and actually spanned about several months. We started in April, and I believe the selection was made in September, so it was a pretty extensive recruitment. So we'll be seeking council confirmation for this position at the council meeting next week, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have at this time. I believe Megan sent out his resume along with the job description and his signed offer letter and his signed ethics policy paperwork. So if there's any additional questions or background, I'm certainly happy to answer questions.
Councilmember Mom.
Sure, thank you. I'm just wondering how the salary offer compares to the previous compensation for that position.
So I actually would have to look. This position, for a little bit of background, was actually previously it was a combined position. So it was the water and wastewater director positions that were actually split out. So the wastewater director position was recently hired, and that was, I believe, Raylene Jeanette was appointed in that position and confirmed. And so this is the other piece of that. So I can certainly look and get you that information, but it's not an apples to apples comparison of what the position was before, because it actually was a combined position that has been split into two distinctly different positions. Oh, you're muted.
I think the combination of the two, wasn't that fairly recent? So we may have some older data that showed what that compensation was for those two positions.
Yes, I think it was the most recent one. I believe in the last administration at some point they were combined. So I think there's certainly some history there from what this was originally before that happened. And I can provide that. The downside would be that it's several years, I'm assuming it's several years ago, so it may not be as relevant just with market, what the market would pay for a position like this now, but I can definitely get that for you.
I think it would be important for us to see what it was, and then what the combined one was, and then what it is now. It'd be important for us to see that history. Thank you.
You are welcome.
Council President Biggs.
You got me? Yeah. Amber, I was thinking that we were going to have a chance to interview him before we were voting on him and get to know him a little better, because I don't think we know him very well. And we have some questions. Well, I should say I have some questions about some of what he sees as the challenges and different approaches he's going to have to different specific issues. So I'm wondering if we can figure out how to do that.
I will certainly look into it and see what we can arrange. Is that, I will find out.
Okay. And you can be in touch with me about it. So.
Okay.
Any other questions?
I just have one other comment. I don't know, was there any, maybe this is a question and then a comment. Was there anyone from council involved in the hiring?
I don't believe so, but I can also find out for you.
Just so you know, historically, council has been involved in some of the vetting and some of the interviews for various positions, sort of based on, you know, our areas of concentration. And I did make this request.
Can't hear you, Candace.
I did make this request of Wes Crago that at least for the planning director position, or the, you know, going forward, that I would like to be involved since I'm the liaison, and other ones coming forward. I think it's really helpful when you have at least one council person who can relay some of the information and also brings a variety of questions that maybe aren't ones that staff would maybe think of, or administration. I think it's super helpful to do it on that end, so they don't have to kind of wait till us be the last pass. I don't know, maybe other people feel differently, but we've certainly done that in the past, and I thought it was very successful.
Absolutely, and I can certainly see the value in that, and I apologize that that did not happen this time, and I will take responsibility for that and see what we can do to ensure that it doesn't happen in the future.
Thank you.
Yes.
And I just have one quick question. Can you explain to me what the competitive recruitment process looks like? What did that look like for this position?
So for this position, it was advertised through NeoGov and our standard applicant platforms. And I would have to look and see what specific, because often the department will say, we want to put it on this specific platform that is, you know, AICP or something planning related or something that's industry related. So I'm sure that it did. I'm sure that that happened for this position. I can certainly find out what those platforms were for you. And then just as a standard practice, one of the things that we have started doing, which would not have been in place for this position, but for all department heads, so director level positions, as a standard now, we are using ICMA and the National League of Cities for all recruitment. And then in addition, whatever industry specific platforms are recommended by the department. And so that should, I think, help just get these recruitments out to a broader audience, a more diverse audience, and also an audience that is really focused on local government as a profession. But that would, I don't believe that would have happened for this position. That's just something in the last month or so that we've kind of standardized. So I can find out what platforms and provide that information as well. But I know it was a pretty lengthy recruitment from what I understand.
That's good to know. Thank you for providing that information. Councilmember Cathcart.
Yeah, just to, I guess, piggyback on that, I would just ask or strongly encourage that the particularly for the planning director position, which I think is probably one of the most important positions that we're going to hire for, go out to preferably even targeted individuals in other communities who we want to frankly steal. I mean, I think we should not be afraid to do that to get the best possible talent that we can get here in Spokane, and not just simply put it out in a few newspapers and professional publications, but really be targeted, direct, and aggressive in trying to recruit the absolute best candidate we possibly can.
Agreed. Yes. I believe we are doing some targeting through LinkedIn and through people's personal, like professional networks. But we can, there's always room to do more of that, so.
Any other questions? Amber, thank you so much. That's good information and we appreciate it.
Thank you. I will bring back the information you requested.
Perfect, thanks. So Councilmember Wilkerson, I don't think is joining us. I don't see her, she's on. She had a prior commitment. So I'm gonna go through really quick. Those of you that have been around a while, you know we've been working on the Fort George Wright name change. Councilmember Mumm, myself, Councilmember Wilkerson, we've all touched it. So I thought I would give everybody an update of where we're at. Right now, we have completed the paperwork, the required paperwork that the Plan Commission requires, working with Tammy Palmquist, the notification of property owners, the application for name change. We've done all of that. So that is all done. The Plan Commission is in charge of this process, and they've received our requests. They're convening a Plan Commission workshop, which is Wednesday, I believe. And then they'll hold a public hearing on October 28th. That will, people can, I imagine, is that going to be in person, Candace, or is that Zoom? Is that?
It's all Zoom.
Okay.
And they can certainly attend on the 14th as well. The workshop might be really good for folks to attend because it sort of outlines the process. You can, anyone, it's public, come watch it, be there,
Perfect.
hear about it. And some of us who've been around for a while, remember we did this process for the naming of the plaza?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Perfect. Okay, so we'll get word out for that. And then if the Plan Commission approves it, then it will go to council for a second public hearing. We'll have a public hearing, council, and then a vote, correct?
Yeah, and I think there's another piece of this where there's some public outreach because the Plan Commission gets input from the community about ideas. I think we had over 100 ideas for the plaza name. And so the question isn't necessarily will it be changed or not. What's being decided is what options there are to change it to. So that might be a little bit longer process. We usually work hand in hand with the administration for them to do kind of a push. Now that we have council help on that marketing side too, or community engagement, we can do some of that too. For folks, because it isn't just our district, right? I mean,
right. And so let me tell you where we're at with that.
Okay.
We met with, I've had 2 conversations with the Spokane Tribe of Indians, and they are convening a committee that will be representative of the 4 other regional tribes. So they've started those discussions. And what I've asked them to do, because this is Spokane tribal land, City of Spokane is named after the Spokane tribe. I've asked them to come back with suggestions for names that we can bring forward, and we at least have an idea of what they want that name to be and what the tribes can agree on. They are happy to take that leadership role and work with the other tribes. They've already started talking, and they have already begun meeting and discussing how they'd like to move forward. So we're going to give them a couple weeks to put that together and give us some ideas on where they want to go from there.
that's just super helpful. I wouldn't be surprised if there were other folks with other ideas as well that the Plan Commission will be considering also.
Yes.
So important for them to know it's a broad net.
Right.
So.
Well, and one of the comments made at the meeting is that as they talk to other tribes, the tribes are very supportive of each other. And so they believe that they're going to get quite a lot of support from the area tribes through this process and in their decision-making, what they would like that name to be, what name they would like to move forward. So that's where we're at. Council President Banks.
Yeah, I wanted to just add in that I think it's great that we're reaching out to the tribes, and I was super excited that Chair Evans from the Spokane tribe actually came into town and to City Hall, and we got to see her. It's been a long time. She doesn't travel very often. But I also wanted to just note that people hear about, Spokane is the city with the 8th largest urban Native American population from lots of tribes all over the country, and they also want to be part of the process. And I've talked with folks from them and said, yep, this is a broad process, as Councilmember Mumm says, that anyone can weigh in with it, and the idea is to provide space for everyone to do it. But I, again, appreciate your reaching out to Chair Evans to essentially let them start that process and convene it according to their cultural traditions and of traditions of other Native American people locally. But it is a large community of all diverse tribal members. So just wanted to make that point.
Yep, and I will say that we are meeting with Tony Lodge and her organization tomorrow morning, and we're happy to have that discussion. But my first and foremost concern is that this be a peaceful process and a respectful process. So that is going to be moving forward a must-have on my end, and I believe on the Spokane tribal end and the other tribes, that this has got to be a peaceful process, and I think it can be. So we're going to meet with them tomorrow, give them an update, so everybody knows what we're doing. We didn't leave anybody out. We just now met with the Spokane tribe. So that's where we're at with that, and we'll keep everybody posted. Any questions? Okay. We're going to go now to the West Quadrant TIF update. Council President, I have not opened what you sent me, so I'm going to have you start this because I don't know what those documents include.
Sure. So most people know that we have a tax increment financing ordinance and agreement that covers specific boundaries, essentially north of the Monroe Street Bridge, quite a bit west to encompass Kendall Yards, and then into the West Central, and then more narrowly up the Monroe corridor, touching the Riverside neighborhood north of the river and Emerson Garfield neighborhood. Right now it's set to expire in 2032. It has 2 sub-areas. I believe the impetus, although long in advance of all of us serving on council, was to find a way to finance the infrastructure costs of Kendall Yards, but also the infrastructure improvements in some of these other neighborhoods outside. And essentially, what it means is that 75% of any increased property tax revenues in the district stays in the district for improvements. Again, most of them are in the Kendall Yards sub-area. Those funds stay in that sub-area. But over time, there have been some additional monies raised outside Kendall Yards. But the frustration of the neighborhoods is that immediately upon forming this, or right around the same time, we entered into a recession. And so we sort of lost several years of property tax increases because actually values went down. And so the request from the neighborhood is to extend that out for 15 years in this draft. And along the way, the legislature, at our city's request, included a permissible use to build affordable housing with those funds now, which didn't used to be an option. And so the idea is to look at those parts of West Central and Emerson Garfield and North Riverside and basically purchase some of those older houses and retrofit them or put other scattered site affordable housing there that would permanently be affordable, which in legal language means 25 years for a single-family home or 40 years for a rental. And so we've been negotiating amongst ourselves as council members and with the neighborhoods to come up with a potential extension, and it's set for a vote at the last meeting in October. The current draft is there. There's still a few pieces missing, but we wanted to touch it by committee. There's an actual, I think, an official notice out in the TIF boundaries, letting the neighborhoods know about it. And essentially, it would still operate the same way, is that the West Quadrant TIF Advisory Council would recommend projects to City Council to fund. The difference is in this one, after 2032, all those Kendall Yards funds would not only not go into Kendall Yards unless it was affordable housing, but go into the rest of the West Quadrant TIF for the second half of the TIF. And the trade-off has always been when you keep TIF dollars in a local area, then that's not available to the general fund. And so that is the trade-off for how long. Councilmember Kinnear has reminded me that the way the language is in the TIF ordinance extension is that City Council at any time could end it as long as all obligations for financing have been satisfied. And so we're not really handcuffing a future City Council, but we are setting out a way forward to invest in the long term in that district. I think that's the overview, but I'm sure people have questions or comments.
Councilmember Mum.
I would like to talk about the 25%. I think this is something that we should probably have a good discussion about. The 25% we don't get.
Say that again. The 20.
It goes to the county, correct?
It goes, right, it goes to the county. The city gets, Spokane County gets what, 30%? Is it 30%? And the city gets 25, I think.
I think it's 75-25, but I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah, I think the county gets the share because part of the money would go to them anyway. They just have to spend their share there locally. So they're not getting our share of money, I don't think. It's my understanding.
So one things that has come up in the discussions with many of the stakeholders in there is why would the council continue to divert those funds directly to the county campus? Wouldn't they rather maintain that in the general fund and then they could still reach their goals by directing it toward affordable housing, from a financial perspective? And honestly, I've never looked at the pro forma of what that looks like. If we got that extra 25%, it could give us some more flexibility, or future councils some flexibility to use those funds in a different way. I haven't heard any other better ideas, but I do think it's important that we talk about the extension keeps this 25% out of the council's hands, out of the community's hands, and does, direct it toward a different body. So it is something to talk about. Maybe there's been some more discussions I haven't heard about.
I'm gonna ask Council President if it's okay if Brian McClatchy wants to weigh in on this, because those are discussions I haven't had a lot of depth in. Brian, are you out there?
His initials are there. I'll just jump in.
Okay.
I think the money going to the county is not money that would ever go to the city, is my understanding. It just says that the money they would get, instead of it going to their general fund, is going to essentially build a parking garage, which will give some relief to the residents who live near the county campus. So I don't think we're giving away any funds that would otherwise go to the city or the county. That's my understanding. It's just funds that would go to them anyway. They came along with it to both support Kendall Yards for their share of sales tax that they get out of it, and also to get that parking garage built.
And that also includes, as I was reading it, the around the parking garage and around the neighborhood of the county campus, enhanced lighting, sidewalks, that kind of thing. Michael Cathcart, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, frankly, I'd like to see a significant consolidation of the county campus, and I think a parking garage, maybe with some built-in office, would certainly help that. But that all aside, I guess I'm just a little confused on this 25%. Are these dollars that the county would just collect through the natural order of things, or is this a special agreement somehow devised with the West Quadrant TIF? And if that's the case, why would the county play a role in essentially this process that, aside from the county campus, which is just essentially one parcel of this whole area, why would they get 25% because of that?
Again, probably, and if Brian wants to jump in, we might need to get a little more input from our legal department or Laura McAloon, who's our outside counsel. But my understanding is that the county portion of funds are funds that would come to them. They get their share of property tax in that area, and they agreed to dedicate their funds to it, as long as they could recapture part of the portion that they were dedicating to spend it on the county campus. But I'm speculating a bit, just to be clear. So I think we're gonna have to defer until we get the actual legal opinion on that. Explain that.
That might be, yeah, I thought Brian.
President,
Okay, is that Brian?
I think so. I think I had a headphone issue. I'm Councilmember Stratton. I'm happy to work with Laura McAloon and James Richmond to drill down and get an answer specifically on that. But I think the council president's explanation of it captures it broadly. Something that was negotiated in the interlocal.
And am I correct in the improvements are not only the parking garage, but in the area around the campus as far as infrastructure?
That's correct. Yeah,
Okay.
That's within the TIF area, yes.
Okay, perfect. Councilmember Kinnear.
Thanks. I think we should take a really hard look at the whole issue around a parking garage. This is sounding very deja vu to me. And I think we need to find out what the pro forma is and make sure that we're not putting in, or the county's not putting in a parking garage that's going to lose money. It's a public-private partnership. Here we go again. I just want to be really careful as we go forward that we're not getting into another situation, another River Park Square situation, because this has all the same fingerprints on it. So I'd like some reassurances over that.
Yeah, I think that's great to confirm that. My understanding is they were just going to build the parking garage for their employees and give them permits, not try to make it into a money-making venture. But we should find that out.
Let me explain something. The parking garage, and I agree, we can get some more information. What's happening right now with county employee parking is going all the way into the neighborhoods. And so that parking, improving the parking situation with the county is, the neighborhood appreciates that because we have cars parking blocks and blocks away. So public safety, number one, people walking to their cars back and forth at night. The neighborhood parking, there are some streets, if you go down there during, a regular work day, if you live there, you don't have a parking spot. I know that's common in big cities, but the neighborhood will benefit too from this. I don't want this all to be about the county. This is about a neighborhood that has been pretty much ignored for 30, 40, 50 years, whatever. So I would hope that we can be balanced. We can get down to the specifics, but I really want people to understand this is about improving West Central. And if it means that we have to get more information because the county wants a parking garage, then I think that we need to get that information and talk about it. But that will positively affect the West Central neighborhood if that garage is built and there are places for employees to park. Go ahead, Councilmember Cathcart.
Yeah, I guess maybe it's a slight different tangent here. And this is a question that really relates to this or 1590 or 1406. do we have an idea of how we're going to make sure that dwellings that are built with these local public dollars are well maintained in the long term? Obviously, if they can't increase rents, or if just market fluctuations, how they're going to ensure that they have enough dollars for maintenance going forward, because that's going to be a big deal in terms of making sure that this is an improvement and a big improvement for West Central, is making sure that it's well maintained housing as well. And I frankly don't know the answer, but I just think it's something that needs to be thought about.
I can get that information, and Council President might have more on it, but I can get that information.
Great.
Yeah. So the short answer to that, Council Member, is that we're designing that program right now, but with exactly that in mind. One of the things with 1590, which is different than the TIF, but it could be very similar, is that 40% of the funds in 1590 go towards keeping people in stable housing and providing them with the resources to keep their places up. But we've been working with Habitat for Humanity and Community Frameworks to try to design some innovative programming that allows for long-term affordable housing and cures some of the problems and challenges in the past of spending the money and getting it built and then not having a stream of money to keep it maintained. So it's not defined yet, but the problem is identified, and appreciate you bringing it up. It's really important.
Councilmember Munn.
Yes, I know there's been so much community work done on this, and I think it is important to get it sort of determined on the financial end of it, just for the reason you stated, Councilmember Stratton. These neighborhoods so deserve reinvestment, and we want to squeeze every possible dollar out of what we can direct in that area. And the TIF itself has a lot of restrictions in terms of what it can and can't be used for, and which areas the funding can be used for. It's actually not all of West Central, as you know. It's a part of West Central. And in a way, I sort of see how we've basketed this. It's kind of two decisions. One is extending it, and then the other is including the funds that come off of Kendall Yards. It's a boost of funding. So I kind of see this as a two-part decision. And I have been getting some texts from some administration folks who are also wanting some clarity about what is this split on the county. And what I glean from it is the TIF, the county is a party to the TIF in a way and included. And so if we extend it, the thoughts that the council would necessarily have complete ability to just change its mind in the future may not be the case. Because if there had been some sort of financial commitment to pay off a garage or something, we may be held to that. So I just want us to know what that is before things kind of get rolling, because I've heard lots of discussion about bonding for housing, bonding for a parking garage. And I think we just want to make sure we know what we're getting into for that long term of a commitment. None of us will be here. We hope we're all here, but we won't be council members at the time. So we don't want to handcuff us too much. So that's where I'm looking for just a little more information, but thank you.
Councilmember Stratton, can I add some clarity a little bit?
Please.
Okay,
Please, thank you.
I just wanted to make it clear that the county parking garage project is currently a project in the existing TIF. It is not a new project. It's already a project that the county wishes to build. It's my understanding that they haven't had the funds to do that. So by keeping it in the extension, we're not proposing to add a new project that's already in the TIF project list within the county projects. I just wanted that to be totally clear. It's not being added. It's not a new project.
And then that could that be built before 2032 then, right?
Absolutely.
If the funds are there.
Right, whenever the county decides that its portion of the TIF funds, plus whatever other funding are sufficient to provide for that parking structure for county employees.
Okay. Anybody else have questions or concerns? Councilmember Munn.
So back to Brian, and it's just because you've got such a great legal mind. If we didn't extend it past 2032, would the city then get 100% of those funds instead of 75?
No, I believe, forgive me for not having super clarity on that, but I believe under the current TIF as is, the county still receives its portion. Remember, the county collects those property taxes, so they have to be a party to the interlocal agreement that determines how those funds are distributed and used within the TIF area.
So the increment for us would stop, but it would not stop for the county in 2032?
No, the entire TIF ends in 2032 under the current formulation.
And then the city would just continue to receive the tax dollars.
The tax dollars that are currently allocated to it.
So we would receive 100% of it instead of splitting it. That was my question, splitting it with the county 75-25. I'm going to have to look into detail. I won't.
I will too.
I'll look into the detail.
Now, again, I don't believe that we are sharing any dollars that would be city dollars. They would just get their share of the property tax they would get. So at 2032, we would get our share, and then they would get their share if we didn't extend. But we wouldn't get any of the money that's currently going to them, is my understanding. So.
And just to let everybody know, just 1 second, Lori, I'm putting together kind of a Q&A and getting these questions, getting answers, and then I will send everything out in the next few days with the latest revision of the ordinance. So I'll work with Council President Beggs and Brian and see if we can get those added, and we'll get some more information to hand out to folks so you have the information and some more clarity on those issues. Lori.
Not trying to belabor this, I'm still very concerned about a parking garage. They're horrifically expensive for a municipality to do. And Garrett's still on this call, so he can verify that we considered a parking garage for North Bank to do right where the new playground is. And we got costs for that, and it was ridiculous. I want to make sure, regardless of who's building it, that it doesn't start out and ends up, with 30 stalls or something ridiculous because of the expense. So that needs to be really fleshed out before. I would like to see that as part of the information package that we get, because I know how expensive they are to build.
So let me ask the question. In my mind, the county collects their portion of the TIF, and they have that money available to build their project, which is the garage. We wouldn't have any say in their project if they're using their TIF funding for their project. Am I correct, or am I missing something?
That's my understanding. My concern still is they don't have a cost figure. We're not getting information of how much it is their project. I understand that. I would like to know how much it's going to cost them, how big it's going to be. It might be the big white elephant next to their facility and nobody uses it because it's not big enough. It's hard to say. And so to Candace's point, to Councilmember Munn's point, should we be considering putting that money in the general fund and allocating it directly to the neighborhood rather than having those funds cycle through the county? So to me, there's still a lot of unanswered questions.
Okay, yeah, we need to talk about it, because I think the county money that's collected for the county in the county TIF bucket is county money, and the money that's collected for the city of Spokane or for the West Quadrant area is the West Quadrant area's money. I don't think we have a lot of say in what their parking garage is going to look like if that's their piece of the revenue that they get. I could be wrong, but that's my only other thing that I've been looking at and reading up on is whether we pay for Broadway to be rebuilt, or the streets or the alleys or the whatever in West Central. We're going to pay for it one way or the other. It would seem to me if we had funding in a TIF that money would be better used that way than general fund. Either way, we're going to have to pay for it. So That's the stuff I'm reading up on, and I'll be sending out some information to everybody, and we'll try and get some questions answered. Council President, did I just give you heartburn?
No, I agree.
Okay. Okay. All right. Anybody else? Okay. So park budget. I think that's our last one on the list. 2021 Parks and Rec budget strategy. Garrett Jones. Are you out there, Garrett? He's on the screen. Is anybody else out there that's presenting with Garrett? Tanya Wallace? Okay, Garrett Jones, are you there?
I am. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Sorry.
You're up, buddy.
Perfect timing. I lost internet. Well, I was right up to my point. So, yeah, thank you for the opportunity today just to give you a highlight of our 2021 budget for Parks and Recreation. Just to give you a little bit of timing, our last Thursday, our Park Board adopted our 2021 budget that you'll see as a full package for the council that you'll see later in the year. This has been, I just want to say thank you to the council for your support, flexibility, brainstorming as we've gone through 2020 together. I think we've learned a lot. There's been a lot of positives. There's been a lot of different ways that we've done things and still trying to find creative solutions. And, before we can move forward into 2021, we want to really kind of touch on what went well in 2020 and how do we build off of that. And I think a lot of what we did early on in March was implement our core service model. And that started, with community and employee safety and looking at asset protection and keeping our parks clean and making sure that we're paying our bills on time. But with that came impacts. And we were able to learn a lot. I mean, as far as our manual irrigated systems and different employee assets and how we can leverage those and around mowing and watering and also making sure we're still able to provide some type of recreational activities. Just to give you a glimpse of just the impact, as you know, 70% of our budget is the 8% of the general fund expenditures from the last full fiscal year. The other 30% is from program revenues, like fees, concerts, attractions, and recreational classes. So, we had a massive impact this year in our 30% of our budget. At a certain point this year, we were down 2/3 of our normal workforce. So what does that mean? Almost 200 temp seasonal staff. So what we've done in working with all different unions in the city is just working together. And really the slogan being, we're just out to make sure we can get the work done and we're going to do it together. And that is management working together with labor, volunteers, and that's been one of the biggest silver linings through all of this. And of course, one of the biggest is community outreach through the process, just trying to keep the community informed of what's happening and also with our regional partners. The other is just a glimpse of the impacts. This is just Riverfront Park, and this is just ticket sales. So if you look at the screen, we were down 1 million ticket sales. So this is 4 Spokanes that didn't go to Riverfront Park this last year. And so that is a huge, massive impact that just gives you a glimpse of the more regional impact. And 214 of our 250 planned events were canceled. We got to give credit a lot to these event organizers coming up with some creative ideas and looking at plan B, A, B, C, and D. But so many of them, unfortunately, we were not able to provide this year. But 2021 is a new year, and we're looking forward to it. Around recreation, too, almost 3,400 cancellations in our programs, in camps, in sports leagues, 1,100 athletic field reservation cancellations, and of course, one of the toughest ones for me personally is no aquatic season. in 2020. And just looking at it all too, the job opportunities that gives a lot of our younger generation in the younger community, almost 200 jobs were not able to be filled this year because of the aquatic season closure. With that though, we've been a little bit creative on trying to, we have prints for our activity guides, and we're pretty proud that our fall activity guide is pretty thick, but we've gone online because that gives us the ability to be more dynamic as things change. And so our team is looking at some pretty creative opportunities to make sure that recreation programs are still a priority. One of our biggest goals is, as it gets colder out and as it gets darker quicker, we want to make sure that we're able to pump positive programs, positive influence into the community to keep the spirits high through the winter months. And part of the recovery planning too is being very dynamic with different rolling timelines. This goes with a lot of our programs along with our third-party partners, and really looking at what the impacts are, ramp-up costs and timing, making sure we're looking at the data and level of service that we're able to provide to the community, and then exploring how we can work with the county and some other partners that we have. And all of that just rolls up into, I think one of the great things is, that we can find positive in a lot of what we do. And I think for us, it was teamwork, working together. The communication, I think the communication between Park Board, Council, staff, and the mayor's office has never been stronger for us in parks. And I think that it also includes all the divisions across the city, rather than always looking at competing with the county, let's partner. Let's use our strengths that the county has and the city has, and let's be able to provide some pretty cool opportunities to the public. A focus on, just innovation, and believe it or not, bringing back a financial strength to our division. This year, we've reset the way we finance and we budget, and it's really going back to the basics of how you budget in your personal lives. Is just because your checkbook is full of checks doesn't mean you have the money in the bank, and we need to be strategic with that and looking at the revenues as they come in and the impacts of the expenditures. And that has brought a new light of how we're able to budget and save, and we're pretty proud of that. And I think lastly is just the level of service and the different voices and the community members of using our parks. In a time of need when everything else was closed down, our parks were that safe place to enjoy for our public. And we've heard from not just the regular, neighborhood council members and others that there's a lot of new voices out there that really take interest in our parks and recreation and open spaces. And that's something we're going to use that momentum here in the future with the park and open space plan. So our highlights and priorities for the 2021 budget, I think, again, it's just a coordinated effort of reopening our facilities and parks and community engagement programs. As things change, being able to work with our regional partners to reopen. Our 2021 budget is really about enhancing the accountability, but also having the flexibility in our changing environment. We don't know when certain phases are going to happen. We don't know what 2021 is going to bring, so we need to have that flexibility, and that really comes around our program revenues. We don't have that view into the future, but we want to make sure if we're able to do something, we have that flexibility to be able to provide that. Continue with our data-driven decisions. Biggest is continue to invest in our wonderful full-time staff. I mean, they all stepped up to the plate this year, and we worked together and did things a little bit out of the ordinary. And so in our 2021 budget, we're not proposing any cuts to our full-time staff whatsoever. And we want to continue to build our great partnerships. And a part of it, too, is a big strategy is preparing to the reduction in our general fund. When we look at, we're a little unique always in parks. So our 8% of the general fund expenditures, our 2020, what the general fund spent in 2020 is going to hit us in 2022. and what the general fund spends in 2021 is going to hit us in 2023. What we don't want to do is have a spike in level of service and then a huge decrease of level of service in 2022. So we want to prepare and save now so we can bridge those gaps for the future if there's any potential reduction in that 8%. And so 2021, we're not going to have any increase full-time staff, so no new positions. No new programs will be considered. And what I mean this is programs that put a burden on our budget. Now we'll always look at opportunities for new programs that are win-wins and thinking of creative solutions as the changing environment, but nothing that's going to put a burden on the division, and then no expansion of current programs will be considered. And how we're going to save is in three major buckets. First is adopted unbalanced budget. So the park board adopted a budget that had revenues over expenditures. So it was not a balanced budget. So that gives us a savings plan from day one that we can transfer funds into a reserve to save for 2022 and 2023. For our full-time and temporary employee vacancy plan, we are still looking at a modified hiring freeze that will remain in place, but really looking at filling those full-time positions that tie into our core services. So a lot of that will be around operations. We have some vacancies in our labor staff that we want to strategically fill because we know a part of our core service, we need to be maintaining our parks to our best of our ability. And the other is continued core service model. So that's working with all of our full-time staff to share some of the burden and slowly ramp up our temp seasonal staffing. So we don't see all this hit in the very beginning. So it's really trying to look at the things that we do have control over so we can save and adapt for the things that we don't have control over. And the biggest piece is around, well, how do you budget for program revenue? So recreation, how do we even begin to budget for something that we don't know what's going to be successful? And so that's where the flexibility and being very dynamic comes into play. And so we're going to be looking strategically at each program. And each program is going to have to go through a series of different impacts and assessments. So the first is really defining what is the level of service and subsidy. So a program that costs as an example, a program that costs $20,000 and it's only serving 20 people, is that a program that we should be providing for next year? Or, it's a program that costs $20,000, but it's serving 100,000 citizens. So it's looking at that level of service, what the budget is as far as reopening costs, with the safety protocols, how much is it going to cost for supplies? And then we always want to look then making sure we have the proper policies and procedures and working with the health district and the state and making sure we can safely perform these programs. And communication. So as these programs look a little unique or a little different, we want to make sure we're communicating the message to the public. And then always continuing that ongoing coordination and then evaluation at the end. That's always important. What worked, what didn't, what could be modified in the future. And so this gives us a lot of control on the programs that we're able to deliver, but still allowing that flexibility with not having that crystal ball of figuring out, well, we think we're going to have, being able to do concerts next year. Well, we don't know. We're hopeful for, but this type of plan moving forward will give us that flexibility. So if we can adapt and we can deliver. So with that, is there any questions on our strategy for our 2021 budget?
Does anybody have any comments or questions? I don't see everybody up here, so just speak up if you want to say something.
Yeah, Mike Kessler here. Hey, just real quick, Garrett, I'm wondering if in fact we are able to put COVID aside and return to some sort of normal, do we have a plan in place to really take advantage of the millions that we put into the pavilion and use that space really, really well to generate revenue?
Great question, and that's our hope. So we have a partner in AAG, so it's one of the second largest concert promoters that we have. And so we do have in our rolling timelines of placeholders for all the events that could happen in our pavilion next year, because we really want that activation to happen. But also, too, with COVID as well, partnering and looking with our great partners at the PFD and Stephanie Curran and her team, as far as how could we use that facility to our advantage as well in other facilities. So even though things might not be able to happen inside, looking at the opportunities to be able for these type of events to happen outside, to happen to be adjacent to these other facilities like the Opera House and the arena. So we're working on some proposals for that as well for next year, because what we don't want to do is continue to see our convention center, our arena, and our pavilion empty. So we're trying to look at some creative ways there.
So if we're going to, while we're still dealing with COVID, possibly take that role on, are you building into your budget enough to be able to have the staff to do that, if in fact that becomes an option?
So we're looking at the performance that we have right now. So all those costs come in the form of temp seasonal. So a part of the program revenue or the event revenue, we roll in that expense as well. So when we look at that pro forma, we know what the bottom line is. So we're doing that right now with the ice ribbon, and hope to be announcing plans moving forward for the ice ribbon in this season. And that's a part of that ramp up too. So we know that we're going to have, let's say, 15 temp seasonal support that program. And that's just a part of our overall net. You know, what does that net look like from the expenditure and revenue side?
You know, I think, again, in terms of the pavilion, obviously, if the original design is what we had built, you know, there'd be this built-in kind of video and audio sort of presence to it. But I think if we're still dealing with COVID next year, in terms of some outdoor events, I mean, kind of using it as like an outdoor theater, set up a large screen out there, socially distanced, and be able to have, you know, movies in the park in the evening kind of thing would be, I think, a great use of that space. If we don't have other things going on. And I think this year, obviously, the restrictions and the lockdown kind of had its ebbs and flows, and I don't think anybody knew what was going to happen, you know, 1 minute to the next. But next year, in theory, I think if we're still dealing with this craziness, we'll have hopefully some consistency in the rules that we can actually follow and provide things like that.
No, I think that's a great suggestion. And one great example of that is when we partnered with Hoop Fest, and they broadcasted the Gonzaga North Carolina game in the winter with those jumbo screens, and see thousands of people in the pavilion and enjoying that in the dead of winter. Pretty awesome. And just know from the Parks and Recreation staff, we're going to find every way to say yes. This year has become way too easy to say no to anything. And so we're going to keep that attitude going into next year, find ways to creatively say yes that are still safe, but might be completely outside of the box, just like our 4th of July fireworks show was. So stay tuned there. We're still looking at how we can do that for New Year's. And so, again, we want to just keep activating these places to just give hope back to the community. I mean, that's, you know, one of our goals. So
my final comment, and I'll be quiet. I loved the neighborhood fireworks. I wouldn't, even if everything is back to normal, I don't know that I would necessarily get rid of that if we can afford to do it, because I think providing that access to the fireworks in different parts of the community is really beneficial.
No, love it. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Okay, that finishes up our agenda. Before we leave, I have two things. First, we need to congratulate Councilmember Mum. She has a new addition to her family, her first grandbaby, and there's a picture. And what is her name?
Parker Madison.
Parker Madison. So welcome to the world, Parker Madison.
Thank you.
And before we adjourn, you got to listen to my Halloween joke. You got to remember it. You got to share it with everybody. What do skeletons order at restaurants? Spare ribs. Garrett Jones, I want you to share those with your kids.
Will do. I'll let you know the reaction, all right?
Yeah, they'll say I'm stupid. All right. We'll see everybody at 3:30.